Hello, everyone. This is our presentation on the Israel Palestine conflict by Musa, Lindsay, Zara, Atlas, and Mahathi.
A brief history. The ongoing problem that spanned for centuries rose once more into heated conflict as the terrorist organization known as Hamas attacked Israel, leaving more than 1,200 dead. Israel, in retaliation, began an invasion on Palestine, more specifically the Gaza Strip, and has not slowed their advance. America, a fierce ally of Israel, backed and funded the conflict, which sparked controversy not only in homeland America, but also put pressure on global organizations set to try those accused of war crimes, which, as videos and information displays, Israel is guilty of. The area has been under conflict for decades after the UN divided them, with multiple failed attempts to find peace and unprompted attacks, seizing of land, and small-scale invasions and bombings. Why it is important. The importance of this issue and why it takes priority is split into two reasons. The first being that currently Israel is pursuing the land of Palestine with unnecessary force and violence, obliterating cities and decimating infrastructure along with displacing millions. Over 34,000 have died due to the onslaught, with millions more living with what they have experienced and dealing with the loss of what their lives used to be. Currently, malnourishment, lack of food, unsanitary conditions, unavailability of medical supplies, and disease are high in the camps where the displaced citizens live. The humanitarian crisis occurring is one that cannot be ignored and shows little signs of stopping unless action is taken in the form of peaceful compromise. The second reason this issue shows importance is the division it has caused and the tensions that rise between people, governments, and foreign powers. In America specifically, protests have broken out and have been met with resistance from police and those who support Israel. This conflict has spread into American politics, with disdain towards the current president rising and, with elections in months' time, adding pressure to both candidates. Similarly, while not all do, recognition towards Palestine statehood between countries has grown, and while few support Palestine in the conflict, with America backing Israel and repeatedly shooting down attempts to aid, along with refusing to entertain the International Criminal Court's warrant of Netanyahu, maybe? If the conflict escalates and America continues its unwavering support, tensions on the global scale could rise further and international relations could falter. What is preventing an easy solution? The question of how to effectively end the conflict with hopes that both sides would stay in a tentative peace is one difficult to answer due to the stubborn belief that both parties rightfully own the land and the other is the one who deserves to leave. Both Israeli and Palestinian people have been in control of the land at one point in history, both holding claim to the entirety of the area. The reason this issue is continued is the constant attempts to take control of all of the area, with peace agreements being thrown out and any form of agreement being refused. In order to properly conclude this situation, both sides would need to agree and be held to that agreement. However, all attempts of this have failed, and when both sides demand a set amount of land benefiting them, a resolution becomes near impossible. With Americans consistently pouring weaponry and money, Israel has no limit to the amount of firepower they employ, furthering the destruction. Because of the conflict, distinct sides have risen and begun protesting in a multitude of ways. These protests serve to split attention away from the conflict and further divide the people who should work in unity to find a solution, instead of villainizing each other and politicizing the issue.
Hi everyone, I'm Zara, and for this next section, we're going to be talking a little bit more about the specific effects in America of this war. So we're going to start a little bit with the U.S. alliance with Israel, talk about that for a second, and then go to the college protests we've been seeing all around America, the backlash coming from there, and then the implications for the U.S. 2024 presidential election, which we're seeing coming up in the fall. So first, with the alliance with Israel, it's always been economic, friendly, very diplomatic, and losing it would, in theory, hurt Israel a lot more than the U.S., given that the U.S. has a lot of trade relationships similar with European countries, and it's largely a replaceable bond, but it's still not great for the U.S. as we like to keep similarly structured nations on our side, and losing them would not be good in that regard. But the most kind of neutral possibility that we're seeing for a solution to the problem is the two-state, and Biden does want this, but naturally Netanyahu, the Israel prime minister, doesn't. He wants his country to have the majority of the territory, all of it, and so we are trying to support them currently, given that our history with them and the fact that we want, to be on friendly terms with Israel, but it's becoming harder and harder as the destruction is kind of overflowing in those countries, and more specifically, very recently, the Israel's Rafah plans, where they're invading the city of Rafah in Palestine, is causing us to kind of have to distance ourselves from an ethical perspective, because we can't really sit there and say we're supportive of Israel, but at the same time, we're supportive of innocent lives being lost, which is unfortunately what's happening with these new military initiatives. Okay, next we have the university backlash aspect of it. So students, largely of Middle Eastern or Palestinian descent, have been kind of causing some stir on campus in colleges all around the U.S., hoping to appeal to the morality of the issue of Israel invading Gaza and then Rafah and all these different places. And they're not necessarily denying Hamas's responsibility, but are hoping to kind of highlight the brutality of the situation, and call for changes from the U.S. and the UN specifically. But then the Israel students, in response, are zeroing in on the hostages that Hamas currently has from their country. And so they're saying, we're not giving you anything until you give us that. And so it's just kind of at an impasse at this point. And so the conflicts have gotten a little bit personal, kind of destructive, and there has been, physical interjection at times. So the vandalism and confrontation has been largely lower level, but the implications for more and the fact that it's just so tense in the atmosphere has interfered with college graduation season and caused some concern. So then, finally, with our upcoming election, which is already looking to be a very charged election, we know that Biden is naturally more progressive, and while, conscious of the alliance with Israel, has expressed disappointment with the extent to which, Israel is dealing with Hamas, particularly in regard to innocents and the vulnerable. And so he'll likely maintain that same sort of neutral deal perspective. Trump, however, largely conservative and comparatively pro-Israel, seems to have less of an issue kind of bringing the U.S. Into that conflict for Israel's side. So naturally, those who appeal to each of the respective sides are more likely to cast their vote for the corresponding candidates, and that's showing that what's an international war can just as easily bring us trouble at home as well. So yeah, that's it for this section.
Hi, I'm Musa, and I will be going over the global impacts of the Israel-Palestine conflict. To start off, one of the largest impacts is the external shock the conflict delivers to global markets and international relations. The volatility associated with the conflict often leads to heightened geopolitical risks, which in turn can destabilize financial markets worldwide. Investors, weary of escalating violence and its potential to disrupt global supply chains, tend to react with caution, leading to increased market instability. Commodity prices, particularly oil, are notably affected by the conflict. The Middle East is a pivotal region for global energy supplies, and any instability there can lead to substantial disruptions. Historical patterns show that the conflict in this area often leads to a rise in oil prices due to concerns over supply security. This spike in energy costs can also affect the global economy, affecting transportation, manufacturing, and even food prices, thus contributing to broader pressures when it comes to inflation. For countries heavily reliant on energy imports, this can negatively affect national budgets and worsen economic vulnerabilities. Social tensions also escalate globally as a result of the Israel Palestine conflict. The nonstop social media coverage and strong emotional and ideological connections many individuals and groups around the world feel towards the conflict can create further domestic divisions. In many countries, large and diverse communities closely monitor the situation, often leading to protests, heightened community tensions, and sometimes even violence. These dynamics can challenge social cohesion and complicate multicultural relations within countries not even near the Middle East. Furthermore, the conflict influences international political relations and foreign policies. Countries often take sides influenced by historical alliances, geopolitical strategies, or domestic political considerations. This can lead to strained diplomatic relations and shifts in alliances, impacting global cooperation on broader issues such as trade, climate change, and security. In summary, the Israel Palestine conflict has far reaching global impacts, triggering external shocks, inflating commodity prices, and exacerbating social tensions worldwide. Its ability to disrupt global markets, drive up energy costs, and stir social unrest underscores the great influence of regional conflicts on a global scale. Moving on to the global impact specifically pertaining to foreign countries. The conflict often forces countries to have a delicate balance in their foreign policies. Many nations must weigh their alliance and economic interests against moral and humanitarian considerations. This balancing act can lead to strained diplomatic relations and influence international policy making. For instance, Global organizations like the United Nations frequently find their peacekeeping and conflict resolution efforts ruined by their member states' deeply rooted positions regarding the conflict. Specifically, Iran's role in the Israel Palestine conflict is pivotal. As a large supporter of Palestine, Iran's involvement adds a layer of complexity to regional dynamics. This conflict provides Iran with a platform to challenge Israeli and U.S. influence in the Middle East. This antagonism often escalates into broader regional tensions, impacting the stability of the Persian Gulf and complicating efforts toward broader Middle East peace and security. Iran's positioning also affects its relations with other regional players who may have differing views on the conflict, such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE. In the United Kingdom, the Israel Palestine conflict has significant political and social ramifications. The UK has a considerable population with ties to both Israel and Palestine, leading to vibrant and sometimes contentious public debates. Political parties often find themselves divided over the issue, impacting domestic politics and election campaigns. Social tensions can rise, manifesting in protests, public demonstrations, and sometimes in instances of anti Semitic or Islamophobic incidents. The UK's foreign policy, particularly post Brexit, has also had to adapt new geopolitical realities, and its stance on the conflict can influence its international relationships and trade agreements. For other Middle Eastern countries, the Israel Palestine conflict is both a source of division and unity. Nations like Egypt and Jordan, which have peace treaties with Israel, often play a mediating role but also face internal pressure from the populations who support the Palestinian cause. These countries must balance their diplomatic relationships with Israel against domestic public opinion and regional solidarity with Palestinians. Meanwhile, countries without formal relations with Israel, such as Lebanon and Syria, remain deeply entangled in the conflict, often hosting large Palestinian refugee populations and experiencing the spillover effects of regional instability. Overall, the Israel Palestine conflict has far reaching global effects, influencing international diplomacy, economic conditions, and social stability. In Iran, it intensifies regional rivalries. In the UK, it stirs political and social debates. And in the broader Middle East, it shapes alliances and internal dynamics. This underscores the conflict's profound ability to impact the global stage far beyond its geographical confines. I just wanted to include something that I thought was interesting. It is all the countries who voted for, didn't vote, or voted against a ceasefire. This data was taken from the UN General Assembly around December of 2023, so some countries' stances may have changed since then. 10 countries voted against the ceasefire, most notably Israel itself and the USA. 23 countries abstained from voting, Germany, Ukraine, and the UK to name a few, and 121 countries voted for a ceasefire. Japan, Brazil, the UAE, China, and Russia are some examples.
In conclusion, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict remains a highly contentious issue with far-reaching implications. The recent resurgence of violence initiated by Hamas and quickly followed by Israel's severe military response in Gaza has resulted in a significant loss of life and widespread humanitarian suffering. The conflict's persistence is fueled by deeply held beliefs on both sides regarding rightful ownership of the land, making a peaceful resolution elusive. Media coverage often worsens the division between them, presenting biased perspectives that lack constructive dialogue. The humanitarian crisis in Gaza underscores the urgent need for a peaceful resolution, while the conflict's impact on international relations and domestic politics, particularly in the United States, highlights its global significance. A lasting peace will require the overcoming of historical grievances in the current climate of distrust. The Israel-Palestine conflict is a significant issue due to its deep historical roots, the severe human death toll, and its far-reaching geopolitical implications. Recently, the situation escalated when Hamas, a designated terrorist organization, attacked Israel, resulting in thousands of deaths. Israel's subsequent invasion of the Gaza Strip has led to widespread destruction and a humanitarian crisis, displacing millions and creating severe shortages of food and medical supplies. The conflict has drawn international attention, with the United States' support for Israel sparking controversy both domestically and globally, and raising questions about war crimes and international law. The deeply entrenched and opposing claims to the land by both Israelis and Palestinians, each with historical precedents, make a peaceful resolution extremely difficult. The conflict has also polarized public opinion, leading to significant political and social divisions worldwide. Examples of possible solutions include the two-state solution, which envisions Israel and Palestine as two sovereign states existing side by side. It requires mutually agreed-upon borders, often based on the pre-1967 lines, with land swaps to reflect current realities. Additionally, Jerusalem would need a special status or share control to satisfy both parties' claims. This solution is widely supported internationally, but faces significant political obstacles and opposition from hardliners on both sides. Another possible solution might be putting the Israeli military under further restrictions, which would decrease or better put an end to the killing of innocent civilians residing in Gaza. For those who want to learn more about the conflict and what can be done to stop it, There are countless online resources from reputable organizations such as the United Nations that are updated daily based on the events occurring in the conflict. Additionally, there are various films and documentaries that provide a view on the current situation as well as its history. Engaging with these materials can help foster a deeper understanding of the conflict's roots and the current humanitarian needs, encouraging informed advocacy and support for a peaceful resolution.
Here's our works cited. Thank you for listening.